Alright, welcome back to a new TouchDesigner tutorial. And in this one we're going to look at how to create this little solar system that you can see here. And this is not so much about creating an actual solar system. I mean, this looks kind of nice, but this is really more about learning how to use tops or textures as a base for instancing. So how to use tops to define the scale and rotation and position of our planets here, and also how to use texture instancing. So how to create or how to put different textures on each planet. So yeah. So we have these little different textures that we're going to use as position, scale, and rotation. And we have these different textures that we can, these are really flexible, so you can use them like any kind of textures to put on there. And we're going to use this thing in the geo down here on an instance 2 page, which really confused me, and maybe I can help you understand that a bit better. And we can also easily change the amount of planets that we want to have, and yeah, the speed of how fast they're moving, stuff like that. So nothing too fancy, but it's nice to understand how this works. And yeah, so as usual, I'm just going to delete everything here and just restart from scratch with you together, if you feel like it. So yeah, for this setup, we're gonna need a sphere. And let's add a transform here, just so we're more in control. Let's just copy and paste this. Before that, let's change the detail to 200 by 200. This is really confusing. Okay, anyways, so now let's just copy and paste this. Drag it down here, and let's also add a circle for the tracks. So let's change this to ZX and also add a transform here. And now let's add a geo from here. So this is actually a question I get asked about so often that I just want to talk about it for a second. So don't just drop a geo here, because then you can't connect it. And people are always, why can I not connect it to the geo? You need to right click here and then connect, and then just select the geo and drop it there. And then you have the input and can put anything in there. So, I mean, you can also just work inside of the geo, but I don't really like it that much. So, okay, anyways, so a little excursion. So let's just copy and paste this and add these in here. Let's also turn off all of these viewers. Let's drag this down here. Let's call this one sun, because that's what it's going to be. These ones we can call tracks, and these ones we can call planets. Let's color these both by pressing C. Let's color them orange, because they're kind of the same, they belong to the same sort of thing. Let's just call this, color this in a different orange, like the sun. Okay, so we're also going to need a camera, because we're rendering 3D stuff, and we also need a light. And we're going to come back to this. Let's just change the FOV angle of the camera to 70, 60. And we also want to use a look at for this camera. So the camera is always looking at this null. So we just drop a null here. I usually just make that smaller, and let's drag that, nope, not into itself, but select the camera and drag it onto the look at. Let's also move up one value. And let's add a render top now. So as you can see, we just have like a big sphere. Let's turn off the rendering for both of these. So we're really just seeing our planets, because that's what we want to work with first. Now let's just add an RGB key, which I just do now to create a black background. And let's add a null and call it BG. Turn on display, go to the render and change to your desired resolution. And also I would recommend, if you have a good enough GPU, to turn the anti-alias to something higher. Anti-alias, I don't know. Okay, so this is our setup. We can also go to tracks now, instance page, and turn on instancing for both of them. Okay, so what we want to do is, as I like showed in the beginning, we want to be able to change the speed and especially the number of planets easily. So let's create a constant chop and just color this black. Coloring is fun. And create a null and call that val. And make one channel that's called numplanets. And another that we're just going to call speed. And let's change the numplanets to like 8. Okay, let's also go to our transform of our first sphere and call the change the uniform scale to 0.1. So just have like this small sphere and an empty void. And yeah, okay. Now let's create a ramp, because what we want to do is we want to like base the positions on a ramp. I'm going to explain that more in a second. So let's just create a ramp top. Let's go to the common page, and for the width, let's use our number of planets, and for the height, just 1. So now we just have this gradient. Let's change the smoothness here to nearest pixel, and now you can nicely see we have 8 different values, and these are going to be the positions of our 8 different planets, or however many planets we define here. So if I change this to like 2, we just have 2 values. Okay, let's also change this to 32-bit float, and we don't need to change anything else. Let's add a math here. Change this also to nearest pixel, just so we can see this better. And let's add a null to this that we call position planets. Let's color this in a nice violet and drag those onto the translate OP of our first planet geo here. And we can select the R here for the X, and you can instantly see we now have 8 spheres, and the B for the Z translation. You can it's actually not important right now. What's important is so I'm just gonna like explain this very briefly. So what we have here is 8 values, as I said, and these are like these are colors, but colors are really just values, and these just go from 0 to 1. So this is pretty much the same as just using a pattern chop, changing this to ramp, like you don't need to do this, and changing this to like 8. So these are also like just going higher. So these two things are pretty much the same thing. The difference being that this is computed on the GPU, so it's a bit more efficient. Okay, let's just change the math here to like, actually for that, let's split the screen. I'm just gonna do this, you don't need to do this. Let's turn off the display for both of these. And what you can see now, we're just moving on our axes. So now with the range, we can change where exactly they're actually positioned. So I want to have them go out further, so I can change the range to like to 2. And let's change this to like point. I can just drag this so you can see So this is just, they're kind of moving it away from the center, because on the center there's going to be the sun. So like 0.4 maybe just like 2.4, something like that. So this is just so you can see what's happening. Okay, so now we've positioned our planets. You could also use a noise, but I'm going to get back to why I'm kind of having trouble with that. Let's just worry about the scale for now. So for that, I'm actually going to use a noise. We can just go to a ramp and copy this parameter, go to our noise and pass the expressions in here. So now it's going to be just the same thing. Let's change this to nearest pixel and 32-bit float. Okay, we can like go down with the period, maybe to like 0.2, change the seed, stuff like that. We'll get back to that. Let's also use a math here, and again change this to nearest pixel and add a null, which we're going to call scale. Again, let's color this so we know what to use. It's just a bit cleaner. And let's change the scale range from like 0.5 to like 1.2 or something like that. Let's go to our planet, planets geo, and drag this onto the scale, and just use the same value for all of these. So now, as you can see, we have 8 differently sized planets, or like spheres so far. Okay, cool. So how do we make them move? One thing would be, or one idea would be to like go here and just change the rotation, and you could just type in abs time.frame, and then you just make them move, but all at the same amount, or like same speed. So this is not what we want. This is not anywhere near an accurate representation of our planets. So let's just copy and paste this noise, change the seed, and so if we're looking at our planets geo here on the instance page, we have our rotation fields where we can like add rotation values for each instance. So we can like add a math here and a limit and a null, and let's just call this rot for rotation, and color this as well, and drag that on here, and we just need to change the y to like r. And what we also need to do is change the transform order to this. So let's actually bypass the limit. We're going to get back to that in a second. Let's change this to nearest pixel here, the math. And now what we can do is like multiply this, say by 360. And now you can see they're like randomly distributed, but they're like not moving. So, okay, how do we do this? Let's change back the multiply. We're going to get back to that. Let's go to our let's go here and add a feedback, because that's how we're just gonna like make them move. Here again, let's change this to nearest pixel and add an add. And here it's important that this one is down here, or that the fixed layer is the input of the noise. And you're gonna see why. No, actually not going to see why if you do it this way, but I can explain later. Let's also change this to nearest pixel and drag it onto here, and you can already see they're moving. Let's create this keyboard in and drag this onto the pulse. So now with 1 on your keyboard, you can reset it, and now they're just gonna like move in different speeds, because they're like all based on this noise, so these values are different, and they're going to be added to itself over and over again, so that makes them move, but like at different speed. And to make this a bit more like, I don't know, just makes sense, because right now it's just going to grow to like a technically infinite amount. And a good idea might be to use a limit, change the maximum to loop, change this to 0 and this to 360. So the values here at the end are just going to be like always go up to 360 and then start it back at 0. Okay, so now we've done that. What we also might want to do is use the speed on the multiply, and now we can like change the amount here, like how fast they're moving. This actually sort of sucks. Is it better when we put it here? Okay. Whatever. I mean, you can like you can just do this way. It might have to do something with the way you're like ordering these, so you might need to like change this to be somewhere else so it doesn't do this weird kind of dragging when you change the speed. But I mean, it doesn't matter that much. It's not, this is not what the tutorial is about. Okay, let's look at the textures now, because that's what like I guess I kind of actually made this tutorial just for that, and then I made this whole system. Anyways, we need to first create our textures that we want to use. So you don't have to create them, you can also just use images, but I like to keep things completely generative, so or like mostly generative. So one trick is to just use a substance and a concrete graph, and then we can just use a substance select, like 2 of them, and then we have like one map here. The other map we can like use the height. Let's change the size to like the resolution to like something a bit higher. And there we already have 2 textures. Let's also create a noise and change this also to something a bit higher. Just copy this 2 times. Let's change the first one, go to scale, just put this to 0, so we just have like lines. You can like go down with the period, go down with the exponent, to have more contrast. For the second one we can go to like 3 with the period, change the seed, and really go crazy with the harmonics. And for this one we can do something similar, maybe go even higher, down with the exponent, change the seed, and just like change this maybe. Okay, now let's add a null to this, color this one yellow, and call it, and this is important, text 0. So you don't have to call this text, but you're gonna see why it's important to like why the naming is important. So let's just copy this 4 times and add these here. So I'm just lazy, so I'm just doing like 5 textures. We have 8 planets right now, so let's just change this to 5. So we just have 5 planets now and 5 textures. And yeah, now let's now go to here, to our planets geo, and look at the instance 2 page where the instance, like the texture instancing is going on. Alright, so this is pretty confusing, I think. We have 3 different fields that we have to use, and yeah, I got confused which ones are which. So the first one, instance textures, is referring to the operator that holds the textures, or the operators that hold the textures. So here we just need to type in the name, so text, and then select all with an asterisk. So this way, as you can see, it's just selecting all of the textures that we have. If we added another one, it also adds that, because, you know, it just takes all the ones that are called text and whatever comes after that. So so actually, just so you know, you could also just call this text like free and it would still work. Okay, so now we still have like 2 fields left here. Let's add a ramp. Oh, let's just copy and paste this. And so the position ramp. And what we need to do let's add a null first and call this index and color it like orange or something. And let's use index for this, because what's happening right now, as you can see here in the background, if we like turn up the lights, it's using the texture, so that's working, but it's just using the first one, because we haven't actually told it to like move through or like count, sort of. I don't know how to explain that. And now we're using the index OP, so this one, but we're not really telling it, like we're only telling it still to like go from 0 to 1, because these values are still just going from 0 to 1. So we have our 5 different textures, but we're just like here the values, if we like look here the values like it's basically 0, 0.3, 0.5, and these are all like still under 1, you know, like less than 1. So we need to like map them to the amount of textures that we have. So we have 5 textures. So just change this to nearest pixel. Let's map this to 4, because 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is like 5 textures. So yeah, makes so much sense. So the last thing we need to do, because nothing is happening, we need to like down here we need to select. So this is pretty much like up here, or like when we're like selecting a channel here, we just need to select the color channel. So this is sort of working. As you can see, we still have like 2 similar ones. That's because if we display the pixel values, we're like still going with 0, 1, 0.2, 2, 2.8, 3, 0.6. These are not actually working nicely. So what we need to do, we need to go to operator on the math and change this to like round. And now we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is perfect. So this is what we want. So now we have 5 different planets and 5 different textures, like a different texture on each planet. So cool. We have done that. So just so you know, this doesn't have to be tops. You could do this with chops as well, like the indexing. But I generally now like to work with tops, because once you understand, it's actually really powerful. Okay. So let's, you could use, like, of course, colors. You could use movie file ins and just put textures there, or whatever you like, your heart desires. You can color these with a lookup. What I'm just gonna do is change the light color to like blue. Yeah, like this blue, and now our planets are sort of blue. What we also might want to do is use a Phong material on the planets geo, and change this to like the diffuse to 1, like the specular to something lower, so they're like not as reflective. Okay, so you can see sort of a problem here with that one, because like the texture is just being wrapped around it, so you can kind of see the edges. But yeah, you know, it just be like that with spheres. Okay, so let's continue with the tracks. So we have like these lines going on. So actually let's start by just, you know, rendering this. Let's go to the circle and change this to open arc. And also let's use a line material for this. So let's just drag this on here. Let's go to the circle and change this to Bezier. And let's change this with in a second actually. Let's first change what we need to do. We want to like have the planets move exactly on the tracks. So what we can do, I mean, obviously we could like just make manually align them, but that's not what we want. We want to instance them as well. So let's just copy this one and call it like track scale, because we're not actually positioning them, we're like scaling them. So because they're already in the center and they're a circle, so if we just scale them, they're gonna be just aligned with the way, like the path of the planets. So let's go here and drag the track scale onto the scale and just use like one value for all. We don't actually need to change the Y value. So yeah, that's working nicely. We can now change the width of the lines. So like if they're like farther away, we can make them like thinner. Looks kind of cool. So just play around with these values. We can maybe move actually our camera a bit in, maybe even more. Something like this is cool. And we can also tilt it, so we just rotate it on the Z axis, like -15, and that also looks a bit cooler. So nice. This works perfectly. And yeah, that's pretty much all for the tracks. So if we like change our number of planets, we can now see we have more tracks as well. So that's cool. So maybe go down with this a bit, something like that. And let's let it work. Not worry about. No need to worry. Let's just work on the sun now. So there you go. There we have a sun. Let's just make this to like 0.24, like 0.2. And yeah, we don't need to change anything here. Let's use another Phong here, drag it on there. Let's we want no diffuse, because like the sun, you know, is actually emanating light and not like there is no light shining on it. So we want to have it like be constant and no specular. Sun is not shiny in this way. So let's use a noise as a texture. Let's change this to like 1024, go down to like 0.25 or something. Let's yeah, maybe, I don't know, change. It's actually fine the way it is. You can maybe go up with the offset a bit. Let's use a lookup and a ramp. And a null. Let's put this on through there. So we have like a white sun now, and let's change, like let's put a bit of red here. And let's make this like orange. So that kind of looks like a sun, right? Cool. So that's our sun. All right, perfect. Yeah, last thing now, let's make this look a bit cooler. The whole like composition and style. So let's maybe move up with the null here, move down a bit, so the sun is like more centered. Let's create a luma blur, so we have like this tilt shift effect, which I always really like. So we can just add a ramp from here, so we have like the same resolution. You know? Change this to vertical, change the first color to white and the second one to black, and then move this into the center. And if you want to like really have it centered, you can always just like click on this arrow and then type 0.5 in here, and then it's going to be real nice and centered. Let's add a transform here and a luma blur here, and just put that in there and change this to like 30. Okay, so now we have like our transform, or like our blur line right in the center, and we want to like maybe rotate it. So we could just manually type in the number we have typed in for the camera. But as you can see, this is inverted. But if we will now change the camera, we need to manually change this again. So let's go to the camera and right click on here, say copy parameter, and just paste the reference in here. And that's also multiplied by -1. to invert it, and go to Tile and extend hold. And now if we just, so you can see it better, let's make this extreme. And now if we change the rotation here, like the tilt shift is gonna move with it, which is cool. Okay, and now we need some stars and maybe add some grain at the end. So for the stars, let's just use a noise here. Go to render, right click on the resolution, copy the parameter, right click here and pass the reference. And now what we want to do is change quite a few things about this noise, and that is the periods. So 0.02. Actually, so you can see what's going on, let's add a composite first. Change this to over and add this in here. That's beautiful. Let's also add a function so we can actually see what's going on. So on the function, let's change this first drop down to input 1 times exponent, or like, I don't know how that's called. And change this to 8. And now we can like mess around with this. So let's change the exponent to 4. So that already looks a lot more like stars. We can change the spread to like 0.4 and this to like 0.65 maybe. Something like this. Change the harmonics to 4, and now this looks more like stars, not just noise. And the last thing I want to do here is to make this move. So I kind of want to create the feeling that this whole solar system is moving there to like the top right. So we need to make the stars go to the bottom left. So let's change this to like ABS time dot seconds times -2. And as you can see, now it moves to the left. And if I add this same expression to the Y animation, now it's moving down to the left. And I also want to like make them move on the Z-axis a slight bit, so like they're like changing on the way. Okay, and the very last thing we're going to do here is add another noise just in here and change this to random. Change the amplitude to like 0.3, this to the offset to 0.1, and this to like 0.2. So now we just have like a bit of grain on there. It's like a simple trick. No need to like add this with a composite or anything. You can just do it this way. Change the noise scale, change the amplitude and offset, and it's a nice way to just add some, like an additional layer. Okay, so we're done now. You can just change the noises to change the way the rotation and scale behaves, and change the math so we can like go down with the scale, so we have like smaller planets like go really like very high up. You could technically use a noise for positioning them, as I said in the beginning, but as I also said, they're like gonna be, we can maybe just try. Yeah, as you can see, they're like really close together sometimes, and then they kind of like overlap, and I don't like that. So I just rather use a noise ramp here. You can also use a noise here, but that's also going to mean that some of the planets are going to have the same texture on them. You can easily change the number of planets here, as I showed in the beginning. Change the speed, and yeah, feel free to like especially experiment around with the textures, and maybe try to like build your own system with texture instancing, because it's really powerful. And yeah, the one last thing actually, right? If you want to have these planets just be like have their light shine on from the sun, just go into the center. So just change everything to 0, and that's it actually. So now you can see this looks a lot nicer, because you know it's a lot more realistic. All right, that's it. So thanks a lot for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you want to support me, I have a Patreon, so you can just check that out. And if you want to have like the file or something, and some other videos. And thank you so much for everyone who is already supporting me. And yeah, I'll see you on the next video.